from Claudia's Creations. Welcome to another episode of Hooping It Up. I would like to share with you today my love of quarter-inch borders. I love what they do to quilts. They add drama and they add pop and they make your quilt go from ordinary to extraordinary. Let me show you a few examples. Here's Spring Surprise. Look how great that inner picture of the tulips looks with that red little border accenting it, separating the black from the white. That's a great example. Here's another one. This is Gingerbread Bites. Look how that blue pops the whole inner side of that quilt. I love this look on there. And sometimes it's difficult for people to get that perfect straight line on the quarter-inch borders. Here's one more example. This is Happy Haunting. Look how that green just snaps that orange and it really pops it out. That's what I'd like to show you how to do today. It can be difficult to do those if you don't know the right technique, but with the few simple tricks that I'm going to show you today, you can make absolutely perfect quarter-inch borders without fail. There are 4 easy steps to bordering your block. Step 1. Cut your background fabric the size that you need. This is an 8-inch square. That's what I'm going to use as a sample today. Then I need you to cut your border strips. Your border strips are cut 1 inch wide by the length that is needed. So there's my 4 to do each side of that block. Next, you're going to take your strip and you're going to line it up on the 2 sides of the block and you're going to pin it so that it doesn't shift. And then you're going to sew a seam, a 1/2 inch seam straight down the middle on both pieces. Now make sure that you line up the right side of the fabric here with your 1/2 inch stitch plate so that you keep very even and you really have a great seam on it. So this is what it's going to look like. You'll have these 2 seams going straight down the middle. Then next you're going to finger press this over. Finger press it before you iron it. Always finger press because you can push it right up to that seam. Finger press that over on both sides and this is what it will look like. So now you have this 1/2 inch border on both sides of the quilt block. Then you're going to rotate the block and you'll do the other 2 sides which has been done here. So now my top and my bottom are done and the 2 sides were done first, top and bottom were done last. Those are the 4 steps. That's very easy. As long as you can sew a 1/2 inch seam straight down the middle, you've got this part done. So now you've bordered the block. What I want you to make sure that you are realizing here is when I flip this over, the block has not changed its size. It is still an 8-inch block. And I'm not adding any length to it. I'm literally just bordering the block itself. And yes, I will have 2 layers of the trim, the little border. I'll have 2 layers of that border right here, and it doesn't make any difference. But in fact, it just makes that block even more stabilized when you go to sew it. So this is what we're working with here. So this is how you get to this point where the whole block is bordered. Now most people can do this part. The trick comes in the next step. Now I want to add another piece to this block. Maybe this is going to be a sashing, maybe it's going to be a whole nother block. You're going to add this by putting your block or your sashing piece right side down on top of your bordered block and make sure you've lined up your edges. Make sure that you pin this so that it stays it stays right where it's supposed to be so it's not shifting at all when you go to sew. If you have a dual feet or a walking foot, that's what I always piece with so that I don't have that shift between the fabrics. Now, this is what happens. When people line this up, if you look at the other side, what you're going to be able to see is maybe it's lined up perfect and maybe it's not. Usually it's a little bit off. So when you sew this outer edge, that's what makes it wobble a little bit because if you're actually following the outer edge, it actually is not correct. And that's where this real cool trick comes in. So let's move over to the sewing machine and I'll show you how to line that up. Okay, now we're over at the sewing machine and I'm ready to sew my 1/4 inch seam allowance. This is where most people have the problem because they're using this outer edge of the fabric and the right side of the foot and they're lining the 2 edges up. You notice I have on a 1/4 inch foot here. And when you follow the outside edge, this may or may not move in and because of how you place it. So let's just flip this over and look at this side. You can see here, if you can see, I can see a little bit of my blue border. I can see the pink fabric. So I put it on the best I can, but I can tell right now that this outer edge is not perfect. So you don't want to sew as you normally sew. Leave the fabric in this position where you have flipped it so that the border block is on the top. Now I'm going to release that pin right there. And what I'm going to line up, I'm going to drop my foot right here. And what I'm going to line up is, I'm going to use this to point with. The left side of my foot is going to line up against this stitch line that I have already sewn. So I'm never going to look at the right side of the fabric or my needle. I'm all about looking at the left side of the foot and is it just touching this line as I sew. That way I know that my needle will always be a perfect distance from this line, which in this case is 1/4 of an inch. Also, before I sew, I want to make sure that I'm sewing on a Bernina 880. It has I'm going to engage it right there, a dual feed foot, which allows all of these layers to feed through at the same time. So if you have a dual feed, if you have a Bernina, or if you have a walking foot on another machine, engage that so that your pieces go through at the same time. Now, I'm just going to slide this up just a little to start right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to sew, keeping what I'm concentrating on, let me see if I can do it, getting my hands out of the way. I'd like the left side of this foot to be lining up with with that stitch line. And I used dark thread on this so that you could see where my stitch line is. Let me remove that pin. And I'm going to remove this pin also. There we go. Okay, let's see if we can sew down here. We're concentrating on the left side of the foot, lining up. Now, I'm going to release that and trim my threads. So I never looked at this right side. Let's open this up and see what this looks like. And what it is, let me finger press this open. There we go. When you open that up, you have a perfect 1/4 inch border. And it's all because of how you added this next piece on. This one, the way we added this, most people can do. It's adding this extra piece on. You want to make sure that you get a nice straight line. Make sure you're lining it up, the left side of your foot, with that stitch line that's already in there. And perfect borders. Woohoo! We did it. So now that you know how to make perfect borders, perfect 1/4 inch borders, I hope to see that on more of your quilts. I also wanted to show you before I close a neutral colored quilt with that same 1/4 inch border technique, and look how that sets that off. Even though it's that black, it really sets off that whole piece. So I'm looking forward to seeing that from you. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Yes, Hooping It Up.